Greetings dear students, welcome to the online class. Today we are going to discuss on first looking into Chapman's Homer. It is written by John Keats. Here is the text of the poem on first looking into Chapman's Homer. As you can see in the text, it is of 14 lines and it is a Petrarchan sonnet. So when we go through the text, you can find the amazing way in which Keats expressed his emotions when he first read Chapman's Homer. Now I have put all the things related to this poem into points. This is a sonnet and it was written by John Keats when he was just 20 years old. And essentially when you go through the text of the poem, you can find it that it is about poetry itself. It is about describing a reading experience, and it is so profound that the entire world seems to come to life. The poem talks specifically about a translation of Homer, the classical Greek poet, by George Chapman, who was an Elizabethan poet, whose translations were more concerned with the reader's experience of the text than loyalty to the original form. And this poem, on looking at Chapman's Homer, was published in the newspaper The Examiner. Soon it was written in 1816. In this poem, the poet or the speaker has travelled through lands full of treasures and visited numerous countries and kingdoms. The speaker has sailed to Ireland in the west, where poets are loyal to Greek god Apollo. The speaker had heard a lot about the imaginative world presided over by the genius Greek poet Homer, but this world was never truly brought to life until the speaker read the translations of George Chapman, which seemed to speak to him loudly and proudly. And when he read this translation by Chapman, he felt like an astronomer witnessing a new planet slide into view. This experience was also like the kind of awe felt by the explorer Cottage when he looked out at the Pacific Ocean, when he and the men under his command fell silent, standing on a mountain peak in the daring region of Panama. When we go through the text of the poem, you can find that this sonnet argues for the transportive power of literature. And through the readings of George Chapman's translation of classical Greek poet Homer, the speaker travels via his or her imagination through the Greek world of which Homer sang. This has a powerful effect on the speaker, which in turn makes the speaker sing the praises of literature itself. And literature argues the poem occupies an important role in society and furthermore facilitates a kind of imaginative travel through time and space. In this poem, the poet has used the technique of extended metaphor that characterizes the speaker, who has been reading Chapman's Homer as an explorer like Stout Cottage, bravely discovering new imaginative worlds through the power of literature. The extended metaphor hasn't been selected at random. It specifically relates to the kind of things Homer sang about in his poetry, travel, exploration, discovery, and so on. Just as Odysseus, for example, sailed around the Greek island in Homer the Odyssey, the speaker or the poet explored these worlds through Homer's writing. Literature then brings its characters' experiences alive in the minds of readers, so much so that readers themselves feel that they are having those very experiences. And of course, this expression only possible because Homer was so good at bringing this world to life. His skill as a poet does no less than ensure that something of the classical Greek world survives of posterity. In other words, Keats' poem demonstrate the importance of poetry itself. Even beyond readers' experiences, it argues that poetry records culture and indeed keeps it alive. And this is the important point which Keats has noted. And these slides are available in description as PDF. You can go through the text of the presentation, which and you can find the details there. Now I am talking about the symbols used in this poem. The first symbol which I am talking about is gold. The poem mentions in first line realms of gold. In literal sense, this is a reference to the activities of Western European explorers during the 15th, 16th and 17th centuries. These explorers, often sent by their monarchs, were not just discovering new lands but trying to find new treasures too. Gold was, and of course still is, a precious commodity, but in this poem, gold has little to do with the plunder and pillage of European expansionists. This is a different kind of treasure, one which takes place in the mind and is discovered through literature. So gold here symbolizes a kind of intellectual and emotional richness that comes with reading, and it speaks to the way that books can provide readers with knowledge and experience outside of their everyday lives. So the next symbol is planet, and it is appeared in the text in line number 10. It symbolizes the odd reaction that Chapman's Homer has provoked in speaker of the poem. To discover a planet as the watcher of the skies does here is a remarkable thing, but the image of an astronomer waiting for one to appear into his skin, his vision, also evokes the patience and perseverance that are needed to get the most meaning out of reading. Through the symbols of planet, the poem seems to argue that through concentrated reading, people can experience entirely new world and travel far beyond the limits of their own space and time. And of course, there are allusions also in the poem when you see Apollo mentioned, the cottage name mentioned. And now coming to the poetic devices and figurative language, the one of the most easily observed figure of speech is alliteration, then extended metaphor, simile is there. You can go through the details through the PDF pages which I have shared. The rhyme scheme is obviously very obvious. It is ABBA, ABBA, and it's a state CDC and DCD. In other words, the rhyme throughout the poem conform perfectly to the Petrarchan sonnet, the pure Italian form of the sonnet. And by doing so, the poem places itself at the crossroads between different literary traditions, the classical world of Homer, the Italian Romanza of Petrarch, Chapman's Elizabethan era in Britain, and Keats' own time. This unique combination makes sense because the poem is making the case for the enduring power and importance of poetry across time and space. The rhymes all ring loud and clear, perhaps borrowing some of the loudness and boldness that the speaker experienced in reading Chapman's translations of Homer, as mentioned in line 8. And when we come to the speaker, who is the speaker of this poem? So, speaker of the poem is not specified, but generally it is taken to be John Keats himself. It is said that, which I will come in the historical context of the poem. And now when we talk about the Chapman's Homer setting, so when we on setting, when we go on the surface of the poem, it seems that it is set in the world of voyages and discovery. But of course, when you go deeper in the poem, you can find that the This poem is set in the speaker's imagination, or more specifically, it is set within the interaction of the speaker's imagination and the text of Chapman's Homer. The power of the translation, coupled with the speaker's commitment to reading, creates Homer's world anew and turns it into the setting of this poem. Of course, the poem also employs extended metaphor and simile to try and capture the feeling that reading Chapman's Homer brought about in the speaker. In a figurative sense, then most of the poem is set in the various real landscapes around the world. The first 6 lines might be said to have their setting as Greece and surrounding islands, though the first 2 lines are perhaps more general, particularly in that part of the world in the ancient classical era. Lines 9 and 10 represent a brief journey into the night sky, while the remaining lines are set in the Americas. In particular, these concluding lines conjure up an atmosphere of the so-called Age of Discovery, when Western European explorers traveled to the Americas. Specifically, Darien is in Panama. So when we go through the literary and historical context of this poem, we can find that Keats had written this poem when he got the inspiration, when he got the readings of Homer in translation by the Elizabethan playwright and poet George Chapman. And through his translation, Chapman prioritized the reader's experience over precise loyalty to the original text, making innovative decisions about meter and elaborating on Homer's work. This prioritization is very impressive. Keats and his friend Charles Clark has been reading Chapman's Homer the night before this poem's composition. It is all about Clark's experience with this poem when Keats was composing this poem. So you can go through the text in the PDF shared. So particularly when we take a particular historical context, we can find and observe that Keats wrote this poem not too long after the American Revolution of 1776 and the French Revolution of 1789, which facilitated Napoleon's rise to power. Overall, the early 19th century saw profound changes in popular thinking about the individual's relationship to society. The influential poet or critic William Wordsworth was particularly interested in the idea of civil liberties, though he became more conservative as he grew older. And we talk about this particular poem, it has a wide historical scope, drawing a link between Homer's time and Keats' own era. In essence, these links make a case for the power of literature as a cultural force. Line 4 gestures to the everyday ceremonial importance of poetry in ancient Greek, while by the poem's end, the focus is more on the individual relationship between reader and text. What's more, the poem's estate is rooted in yet another history, the so-called Age of Discovery. However, Keats doesn't delve into the darker side of the Age of Discovery. So now we have come to the end of this poem. Thank you so much for watching.